Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Past Master by R.A. Lafferty. We left Thomas More and his companions fighting the programmed killers on the top of Thunder Mountain in the middle of a lightning storm. And not just an ordinary lightning storm, you may be sure. On the third next bolt we go down, Evita cried to Thomas in a sharp underneath voice that got through to his stunned ears. You and the paw and the eye. The others are already too blood-drained and broken to get through. What, brat? Go down where and how? Thomas croaked as he was being overpowered and near split open himself. Your brains, Thomas, use them. We go then or never. Be a man and think like a man. Follow your intuition when the moment comes, or it will be narrower than the lightning moment. A blow that literally burned the eyes and choked the lungs with an intake of light, a thunder smash that knocked them all flat, men and machines, and they were at it again after a narrow defiance. The boy Adam died a glorious death in glorious gore, howling defiance. He was good at dying, Evita had said. He had done it before. A second bolt coming at the same time from the sky and from Corona Mountain. Rocks melted and ran like water. The thunder shock was like a deadly blow in deep bowels, and the green robe died of a smash between the throat and the lorica. He died loudly, but not unhappily. He was a good one. Thou art a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek, Paul gave his requiem. Watch to your left there, Maxwell. Oh, well, never mind then, too late. In the darkness deep beyond belief, Maxwell's body had been smashed before Paul's warning could be heeded, and his odd spirit had been sundered from that broken body. Never mind, Maxwell had a trick of turning up again, an oddity of his. Be paralyzed now and be you transfixed forever, Evita warned in the low voice. Now it was at hand, the last narrow moment at which even mad escape could be thought of. The third bolt, ripping from Corona Mountain to Electric Mountain, blinding and transfixing machines as well as humans for the much less than an instant of it. Down, down, with all mad speed down, and one slip is hurtling death. Down during the light that is more blinding than any darkness. Down, using a narrower moment than the lightning moment itself. Down through the darkness that is darkness indeed. Down through the clap that stuns and knocks out both sensors and senses, already down a great hurtling drop before the instantaneous blast of the thunder. Then continuing down for a minute, for a quarter, for an hour, discovered and howled after and followed by swift iron trackers. Down onto the lower plateau and down again, while a part of the programmed followed them closely, and the rest complete the tall trap on the pinnacle to mutilate and record what is left. 3 dead humans, 1 dead hybrid whose final pattern shows he opted for human late, 1 gibbering creature still alive but disregarded since he represented no threat to the dream or to anything. But 3 of their prey had escaped them, have fallen like lightning down the spire in a lightning instant. Never mind. If the programmed do not get them this night, they will get them another time. And the advanced scrim of the programmed have not given up on getting them this night. Thomas and Paul and the brat child Evita were all strong on their legs and possessed of a sturdy life urge. They were no longer in the middle of the towering thunderstorm, and they felt certain that their senses were returning to life after their stunning. The storm was above them now, and they were no more in the middle of the display. But they were charged and full of spark. They glowed with coronas about them, blue electric auras. They shined and hissed like ghosts. They came down into the wild savanna country just as the sky broke open. It was a torrential downpour, a giant rain that could not be exaggerated, a part of the neat balance that kept Golden Astrobe golden. Still, it was savage water that dropped from the upped abyss, the deluge itself. They went at a great pace all the night to escape it, and every brook was a raging river. It was already false dawn before they could get a glimpse of each other's faces, and all 3 of them, Thomas and Paul and Evita, had suffered a deep change. They had been transfigured on the mountain. They were not quite the same people they had been. Something new had been burned into them. They crossed the last of the feral strip, moving in an agony of weariness and blood loss, still pursued by the mechanical killers, as all would be pursued for the short remainder of their lives, still in the black afterglow of the dizzying light. They were alive, but not entirely. There had been tracers burned into them. Defiant though they might be, they could no longer be their own people untrammeled. They were marked. Really, it was a sight worth seeing once, Thomas said. I have found the strong skeleton beneath the golden flesh of the world, the iron in the marrow and the deep green blood. And the something else, the void. Ah, those grinning empty faces up in the sky that were all the nothing face. Not up in the sky, Evita said, down in the sky. We be upside down on Astrobe, and we saw down into the ultimate pit when we were on the mountain. Crossing the last of the feral strip, followed closely and hounded in the very early morning, they came into giant Cathead from the backside. Chapter 8. Black Cathead. Thomas had been lingering in Cathead for several days. Evita and Paul had left him to do his work for him, they said. Kingmaker sent word for him to get back to Cosmopolis immediately. He stated that it was time Thomas campaigned, or at least stood by to be shown. Thomas sent word back that he had been proposed for the job of physician, and that as such he intended to examine the disease, at least superficially. He had been around the fringes of Cathead before, on its borders with the barrio, and into certain of its tortuous suburbs. Now he had to study the sick giant itself, that mad thing that was eating into beautiful and rational Astrobe. He had to find out the riddle of this bleak monster city. Cathead was larger even than Cosmopolis. It had a population of more than 20 million persons, and it had grown to that in 20 years. It was human misery on the largest scale ever known anywhere. Take it from the outside and in general. Cathead fronted on the Stoimanov Sea. It connected with both the Grand Trunk Canal and the Intercity Canal. It had 100 navigation channels. It was astride all the lines of civilized Astrobe like a huge spider. It had tremendous industry, stark and noisome, not hidden and disguised like the industries of the Golden Cities. It was an angry town built out of extreme poverty, with all commodities produced at a much greater real expense than any of it in the Golden Cities. It was a noisome place based on noisome cargo. But Cathead produced nothing that was not produced elsewhere in Astro, nothing that was not already present in abundance. Cathead handled all the products of marine mining, for the Astrobe seas were vast chemical vats, sharper than the seas of Earth. But the other cities also handled all the products of marine mining, and without the repulsiveness of the processes of Cathead. Manufacturing techniques in Cathead were archaic, inhuman, and very expensive if human years and lives were counted in the costs. And cheap, clean processes in all the other cities stood in ironic parallel to the Cathead thing. First stages of some chemical processes as performed in Cathead were so raw that they were absolutely deadly. People died like dayflies in those industries, and they lived miserably while they lived. And there was no need of Cathead at all. But some millions of citizens had left the golden cities of Astrobe, had refused advice, had defied threats, had climbed barricades in more recent years, and run the gauntlet of gunfire to get out of the pleasant golden cities and into bleak Cathead, to suffer there and to die there. And the lives they left for this were the most pleasant lives that men and machines had yet been able to devise. It seemed a poor trade. This was the riddle of Cathead and the sickness of Astrobe. The people had entered the Cathead thing by free choice, and they could give it up any instant they wished. The people who coughed up their lungs at the terrible labor there were low, poor people who could be high, rich people by sundown tonight if they wished. They were hard, surly folk who had entered the slavery deliberately, and more were entering it all the time. They went out in the sea harvest boats that made old-fashioned garbage scows seem like dream ships. They worked 20 hours a day on the noisome sea, and 3 years of such work would kill the strongest. But the golden cities had automatic sea harvesters. The slag workers in Cathead lost all their coordination. They stuttered and slobbered and could not speak or think straight. The gel miners coughed up blood by the bucketful and went insane at the work within 18 months. The extractors of oxypyrites had the most terrible labor of all, absolutely killing. And the curiosity of this is there was no market or use for the product, no pay for the work, no reward of any kind. Men borrowed and begged and sold their children for food and went to the non paying labor that maimed and killed. They turned blue and went mad from it. The product was piled up useless and poisonous, and the corpses that were the byproduct were piled up nearly as high. And yet, more than 500,000 people, men, women, and children, worked their 20 hours a day extracting oxypyrites and wagered whether starvation or the poison would kill them first. Take it from the inside, and in particular. Take the Rat Castle. This was 35 stories high and 150 meters on a side. Once, 25,000 people had lived closely crowded in it. Now, there were perhaps some remnants of those 25,000 skeletons, and there were 1 billion rats. They covered the outside so that the color of the old building could not be told. They throbbed inside in carpets a meter deep and covered the walls like live paper. They raided out from the rat castle, killing and eating children by the thousands, killing women, killing grown men, covering them in a devouring cloak and shrinking them down to bones. They went right through wooden buildings. They ate mortar as though it were cheese and weakened and entered and toppled brick structures. They ate 3,000 people alive every day in Cathead. There were upwards of 100 other tenements in Cathead taken over completely by rats, but none of the magnitude of the rat castle itself. Well, then, why the unburied bodies that were everywhere in Cathead? Why the putrid flesh bubbling and near exploding in the sun? Why the odor that would actually fell the poor people with the strength of it, and these the lungers who could stand anything? Why did the rats not clean up the bodies? Why, most of them they did. This remnant, the few hundred you would see in a morning's stroll through the lanes of Cathead, were too strong for the rats. There are poisons and poisons. There's flesh so poisoned in the death of it that even the rats will not touch it. Take the sadists' dives. Take the children sold into them. For one of these, in quite recent years, the devil himself ran retching. Take the rat hunters and the rat butchers and the rat markets and the rat eaters. The only way to stay ahead of them is to eat them first. Take the day of the yellow flag, usually Monday. That means that the plague itself is loose in Cathead. It will usually run its course, take its tolls, and pass on within 4 days. And then it strikes again, and the yellow flag is once out. And then it strikes again, and the yellow flag is out once more. Inoculation is available and free to all persons in Cathead, but few will accept it. Take Bethlehem, which began as a madhouse, grew to a mad farm, grew to a mad district, and is now more than 1/3 of all Cathead. 8 million persons live in the Bethlehem district. Each one of them is insane to some degree. They get along about as well or as badly as the other citizens of Cathead. Copperhead, said Thomas, for they walked together, look at the men working on that project. There's no organization at all. A good swine steward from my day could order things better than that. Why? They suffer more at the badly ordered work, Thomas. Extreme suffering is a part of the Cathead thing. Walter, why are their bodies left unburied in the lanes? A reminder of death. Follow it out far enough and it becomes a reminder of life. Copperhead, is there not one ray of sanity in all this? Why do the people not return to the golden life? This they choose. But it spreads, it spreads. More leave the world of perfection and join the misery every day. Better a life of misery than no life at all. But there is life, the most wonderful life ever in the golden cities. These dying miserables can receive it back within an hour. Why don't they do it? Damn you, man, you're laughing at me. Thomas talked with some of the leading men of Cathead, Battersea, Shanty. He asked them again and again the reason for it. They looked at him with curling contempt and made cryptic remarks that he couldn't understand. They turned aside and spat green every time he suggested that the Cathead lungers should return to civilized Astro. Fool, said Battersea. Blind man, said Shanty. I must have caught fool's fever to talk with you at all, Thomas swore. I would say die in your misery and be damned to you, but it spreads. It's eating up the world. I swear that when I come into my power, I will raze every brick and stone of this place and destroy every unreconstructed being here. Blind man, said Shanty. Fool, said Battersea. Thomas looked up Rimrock the Ansel. This was one mind in Cathead he respected. He found him, tired from 3 days diving, in a fantan parlor where the Ansels went to be fleeced. Good Thomas, Rimrock greeted him, I preach you as the hero above all heroes to the people and Ansels and other creatures of Cathead. I tell them all, as the Battersea also tells them, that you are, as of now, a total fool, of course. But I tell them that you will be given one moment right at the end of your life when you are not a fool. I tell them that many entities do not have even one moment when they are not fools. I build you up every way I can. I hold you less a fool than the other men of Cathead, Rimrock, Thomas said. After all, Ansels are not much regarded in civilized Astrobe. You do not have the golden life to go back to. Have I not, Thomas? You never lived in the ocean depths, or you would not say that. It has its own perfection there, and I left it willingly for this. Why, Rimrock? It seems that that would be a life of total freedom. Why trade it for the slavery and misery of Cathead? No, Thomas. The life in the ocean depths is very like the life of Golden Astrobe, too much like it. I lose my identity there. I am one of the school, and my mind is merged into the school mind. I never regretted becoming a man. I never regretted becoming a Cathead man. But you set me too low when you imply that I haven't given anything up. I've given up as much as any of them, though of course there was a certain ignominy in being taken and eaten for a fish, which might have happened to me in my former state. Thomas left all those hardheads of Cathead in disgust. They had been offered happiness on a platter again and again, and they had rejected it for misery. They were killing themselves for no point at all or for a childish point, and they were poisoning and destroying a whole world with their madness. They had to be exterminated like the rats they refused to exterminate. Thomas walked long and he thought hard. He grew sick unto staggering from the surroundings. He was the doctor, and the sickness made a strange, insane appeal to him to let it live and let the host die. It would be intolerable if there were something valid in all these miserable people and their thing. It is beyond my comprehension, he said. A poor woman reached out and touched Thomas as he walked in a muddy lane in the outskirts of Cathead. You will be king for 9 days, then you will die, she whispered. She was crying softly. Make me no Salvator, you witch, he grumbled. I'll have naught to do with high fate business. In his walking, Thomas came onto a small medieval castle dwarfed by the giant shanty tenements of Cathead. What is it, the building here? He asked a coughing man. Is it a show house, a hobby? Is it the residence of some old fogey? Does anyone live here? Nobody lives here, the coughing man said. The Metropolitan of Astrobe dies there. Surely the cranky old man is a long time dying, said Thomas. He knocked at the door of the old buzzard roost, and there was no answer except perhaps a low moan and rail inside. He opened the door and went in. He went through the first and second rooms without finding anyone. Then he came to a room with an old battered bed with a faded royal canopy over it. A very old, thin black man lay in the bed. He showed all his bones. He was no more than a skeleton. There was a fetid odor, and Thomas believed the man was dead. On his finger, the old black man had the fisherman's ring, such as is worn only by one other. There was no one in attendance on him. This was the Metropolitan, the last of them, it was said, the Pope of Astrobe. Dead you are, Thomas said. Well, you've lived a life. A Dutchman I knew would have liked you to paint as you lie there, skeleton though you be. A striking man, little as there is left of you. But the old Metropolitan was not dead. He began, eyes still closed, to speak in an old sort of liturgical canto. Deus qui beatus martis tuos Ioannem et Thomam Vere fide et Rome ecclesiae principatus propugnatores inter Anglos suscationem, eorum meritus ac praesibus concede, ut eiustum fidei professione unum omnes in Christo efficiamur et simus. Your eyes are closed, but your voice is good, and you seem to recognize me, Thomas said. I assume that I am Thomas, but is Ioannem? St. John Fisher, the Metropolitan said. You have Saint's Day jointly. Ah, yes, lost his head just 14 days before I lost mine, I'm told. I have never heard the collect of my own Mass before. Dammy man, who has, save from the other side. Have you no followers? Are there none to attend you? But certainly I have followers, Thomas. I have 5 or 6 followers left. Someone looks in on me every few hours. I have everything I need. Have you food and drink? I have, but no stomach left for them. I am eaten up. In the cabinet there, pour yourself a large glass of wine and myself a small one. Can you open your eyes? Thomas asked as he poured out the wine. I can make the muscular effort, but it is no avail. I am blind. So this is the way it ends here? You are the last of them? No, I am not the last, Thomas. We have the promise. We will last till the end of the world. You yourself die soon, old man. Quite soon, Thomas. 30 hours before yourself. I'm minded of the words of a partisan of mine, since turned strange and useless. But we are not the world. We are quite a different world, and no promise was ever given to us. What say you of that, good Metropolitan? Nonsense, nonsense, he said. We have the promise. It was given to us here on Astrobe in these latter days, given in a queerer and more flaming way than you could imagine. Know you that Christ has walked on Astrobe in human form in the company of St. Klingensmith and others? Know you that the burning promise was given, and the flame begins to rise? In your 5 or 6 followers? Those in the immediate neighborhood, Thomas, more than 100 left on all Astrobe. It will grow. If you are of the faith, then the very stones and clods of Astrobe will sing of the promise to you. If you regard all such things as legends, learn then and regard the legends at least. You will find here a richer legendary than ever greened old earth. Go to sleep, old man, it's all finished. 'Tis never finished, Thomas, 'tis never hopeless. You are a living witness to what you cannot see. You ferret-faced little man, you became a saint. How can you know I'm ferret-faced, blind man? You are the blind man, not I. And the old skeleton was laughing. They drank the good wine and talked a while. Then a coughing young man came in to attend the Metropolitan. He was still filthy from work. Good day, Thomas, the young man said. Sometimes the old man is crazy and sometimes he is not. Be patient with him. Thomas rose to go. Turn, God, and bring us to life again, the old metropole blessed him hopefully. And thy people rejoice in thee, Thomas gave him the response. Then he left him. The last of them, Thomas said to himself when he was out in the roadway again. This is the way it ends here. Sea gleaners were just bringing in a scow load of Dutch fish to be ground for fish meal. It was not really brutal work by Cathead standards, but it was plague day and 3 of the men had died. The scow-master stripped them of their boots — dead men's boots are lucky, and there is a regular market for them — and then rolled the 3 bodies in with the Dutch fish. He buried them in the fish, but half-heartedly, not caring much. The buyer came onto the scow, surveyed the take, and saw legs sticking out and the outlines of all 3 bodies. We'll weigh them along with the fish and take them, he said, but I'll have to dock you a Stoimanov detain for each body. They just aren't up to the fish in phosphor and sulfur, and they're hard on the grinders. Well, that was Cathead for you. We'll go elsewhere in Astrobe next time.